Hey y'all, thanks for stopping in. My name is Erik, and this is Erik Bets Fights. Tonight we're going to be breaking down the upcoming matchup between Ryan Hall and Darrick Minner. It's going to be going down this Saturday, December 11th, on the Oliveira versus Poirier card. Before we get into the breakdown, though, I just want to say this. I know my audio is pretty terrible. I know my lighting isn't the greatest. I know my background is pretty janky. We're working on all those things. I'm really new to this YouTube thing, and I do have a microphone. I lent it to somebody. I need to get it back. I'm going to sound warm and nice, and I'm going to have these dulcet tones going on once I get that microphone back. I also ordered a ring light, so we're going to get that going on like the real YouTubers do. We're also going to get this background cleaned up a little bit. Although I've noticed a lot of MMA YouTubers, they don't even really worry about the background, so maybe you guys don't care, but I'm going to try to make it a little bit fancier looking, clean it up a little bit. But anyway, folks, let's go ahead and jump into this breakdown. The reason I chose this fight, Ryan Hall and Darrick Minner, I am absolutely fascinated by this matchup. I think that this is just the most interesting fight on the card. Definitely not in terms of like having big stakes or being an important fight. I just think it's a fascinating matchup, technically speaking. So first of all, let's take a look at the tail of the tape. We're looking at a 145-pound fight here. Darrick Minner is 31 years old. Ryan Hall a little older with 36. I don't really have any concerns there. I mean, Hall, 36 is starting to get up there a little bit, especially for the smaller fighters. But with the style that Hall fights with, I don't really think that even if we do see a little bit of an age decline, it's not going to make a super big difference, I don't think. Minner's 5'7". Hall's a little taller at 5'10". He's kind of a slimmer guy. Of course, both 145. The reach is actually the same at 71 inches. The experience, Darrick Minner is a very experienced fighter at 26-12. He was one of those guys who was kind of, he's been around for a long time. He was kind of a journeyman, fought in a lot of different promotions, got a lot of experience against different levels of competition. And then Ryan Hall, obviously very experienced in the jiu-jitsu world, not so much in the MMA world, sitting at 8-2 with only 10 professional fights. Next, let's talk about what have you done for me lately. This is where we take a look at each of the fighters' last 3 fights. They're both coming off losses. Actually, they're both in exactly the same situation, with their last 3 fights being the most recent one a loss, and the 2 before that were wins. First of all, looking at Darrick Minner, his last fight was a loss to Darren Elkins. That fight ended up being a ground and pound stoppage in round 2. It was a gritty, tough, back and forth, high octane kind of fight. Lots of energy, lots of scrambling, mostly played out on the ground, and then essentially Darrick Minner just gassed out, which is kind of something that he does. He's kind of all action. He doesn't really save his energy. He's go, 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 scramble, 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 look for submissions, and he just wears himself out. And that's kind of what happened here. He just kind of wore himself out, and then in round 2, Darren Elkins was able to find the ground and pound stoppage. The fight before that, for Darrick Minner, he did beat Charles Rosa. That was a unanimous decision. Kind of similar to the Elkins fight, except that Darrick Minner ended up winning. But it was, again, mostly played out on the ground. Lots of scrambling, really, staying really busy and that sort of thing. And it is nice to see that, because like I said, Minner does have some cardio issues. He was able to pull out a unanimous decision victory here against a pretty tough guy, even though it was a really high energy fight where he was burning a lot of energy. And then the fight before that was a win over TJ Laramie, where Minner was able to find a guillotine choke in less than a minute. And that really is the Darrick Minner blueprint. What Darrick Minner wants, he wants to run out, he wants to punch his way into the clinch, he wants to grab a guillotine and end your night. That's what he's looking to do. We pretty much see Darrick Minner clinch up and go for that guillotine immediately in pretty much every fight. That's kind of his thing. Moving over to the Ryan Hall side, his last 3 fights. His most recent fight was a loss to Ilia Topuria. Got knocked out very brutally in that fight. In the first round, Topuria was able to kind of catch Hall rolling in with his Imanari roll like he always does. Topuria was able to kind of catch him coming in, get him off guard a little bit, and then he was able to land ground and pound on Hall. Hall was on his back, and he was able to just knock him out cold. So I think what we saw there is a pretty excellent blueprint for beating Ryan Hall. Not to say that it's easy to do. It's definitely one of those easier said than done kind of things, but we saw a perfect game plan, a perfect way to beat Ryan Hall with the style that he has. The fight before that, Hall was able to take a decision over over Darren Elkins. That fight largely played out on the feet. We saw Hall staying at distance largely and using his kicking game. We'll talk more about that when we get into the striking section here, so we don't need to get too in depth there. And then the fight before that, Hall defeated BJ Penn in the first round of the leg lock. We're not even going to talk about that one because when we say BJ Penn, we really mean the ghost of BJ Penn. I mean, BJ lost, 7-8 times in a row in the UFC. He's not what he used to be. He's not anywhere near what he used to be. And not to disrespect the guy, but a win over BJ Penn just doesn't really mean anything anymore. So we're not even going to get into that one. Let's move right along to talking about their striking. First of all, Darrick Minner. Darrick Minner really only uses his striking to get into grappling range. You'll see him in the beginning of a fight. You'll see him be very, very aggressive with his striking, sort of like what he did against TJ Laramie that I was just talking about. When the fight starts, you'll see Darrick Minner throw some leg kicks a little bit and that sort of thing, and then he's looking to strike his way in with combinations so he can lock up with you, get into a grappling scenario, and hopefully find that guillotine right off the bat. And he doesn't seem to be a guy who worries too much about conserving energy. He's just going to blast in there with punches, try to grab that submission, and just get it over with. Honestly, I know that's not much of a breakdown, but that's about all I have to say about Minner's striking because he really doesn't look to use his striking. I mean, he is looking for the knockout. He swings hard. It's not that he's not open to ending a fight with strikes. He is. When he's coming in, he's swinging to take your head off. But he knows that, most likely that he's just using that to close the distance. And when he does land, people get hurt. I mean, he hits hard. He is able to do the club and sub kind of thing where he might land big punches coming in, hurt you a little bit, and then jump on that neck and take the guillotine. But really, that's about all he uses his strikes for. Moving over to Ryan Hall, talking about his striking, he has one of the weirdest striking games that we've ever seen in the UFC, I would say. It's really a functional taekwondo type of style is really what he has. He doesn't even really have a boxing game to speak of. It's really, it's a kicking game, and that's about all it is. Ryan Hall is looking to stay on the outside. He's looking to stay at a range where you can't box with him, and he's looking to throw spinning kicks and hook kicks, and that's really about it. But the crazy thing is, he actually is able to use those things pretty effectively. A lot of times when we talk about, fighters using a lot of, flashy kicks and that sort of thing, it's kind of something that people poo-poo a little bit as far as like, getting too into the traditional martial arts. Although over the years, obviously, we've seen a lot of fighters use traditional martial arts. Lyoto Machida, Stephen Thompson, we've seen traditional stand-up arts like karate and taekwondo be effective in certain fighters, but never in quite the way that Ryan Hall does it. Because like I said, he doesn't even really have a boxing game. He'll throw punches, but he's not really looking to put together punching combinations. In fact, I think if you allow him to, I think Ryan Hall would be more than happy to spend 15 minutes staying 10 feet away from you and just occasionally throwing a spinning kick and a hook kick. Unless you actually got close enough to him that you were in boxing range where he had to be concerned about that, because that's the point at which he's going to Imanari roll. We'll get into that more when we talk about the grappling, but I think Ryan Hall would be more than happy to just stay out there. He's not burning up a lot of energy. He's not really in danger unless his opponent can throw the kind of kicks that he can, and we just really don't see a lot of people use kicks in that way, so I think he feels pretty safe out there. Stay on the outside, throw those kicks, keep moving. If somebody gets in close enough, he can look to grapple, and I think he feels pretty safe working with that kind of structure to his game. And with that, let's go ahead and talk about their grappling. Obviously, that's where both of these guys butter their bread. They're both excellent grapplers. Darrick Minner has quite a few wins by submission. Like I already said, he's just looking to close the distance on you, and he wants to grab that guillotine right away. I didn't look up how many wins he actually has by guillotine. If you guys know, go ahead and throw it in the comments down there. But he definitely has had quite a few wins by guillotine, and it's hard to say how he's going to want to approach this fight. I mean, obviously, Darrick Minner, he's a great grappler. He's confident in his grappling skills. He knows that that's where his best win condition lies with most fighters, right, is to go to the ground. That's what he's looking to do. So one would have to assume that's what he's going to want to do here as well. I mean, obviously Ryan Hall, known as the Wizard, he is a grappling wizard, especially if you end up in that 50-50 position with him. There really isn't, even if you're a high-level grappler yourself, like Darrick Minner is, if you end up in that 50-50 position with Ryan Hall, which is that position where the legs are kind of locked like this, you probably know what the 50-50 position is. If you end up there with Ryan Hall, even if you yourself are a high-level grappler, you're in trouble. It's just a fact, because that's Ryan Hall's specialty position. You're not going to last long with him there. So when Ryan Hall is going to the ground with someone, that's what he's looking for. But we would have to assume that Darrick Minner is going to be confident here and is going to be looking to go to the ground, probably even looking to punch his way in and go for that guillotine right off the bat, like he does in pretty much every fight. Moving over to Ryan Hall's side with the grappling, we talked about how he stays at the outside with his strikes and is more than happy to just throw spinning kicks and hook kicks. And when his opponent moves in, when his opponent moves into boxing range from that kicking range, that's when you're going to see Ryan Hall go for that Imanari roll. That's pretty much his whole game. His whole game is stay at range and throw kicks. If you close the distance to boxing range, then he's going to Imanari roll and try to grab your leg so he can get into 50-50 position or go for a leg lock of some kind. That's usually a heel hook. That's really Ryan Hall's whole game, and that's what makes him such an interesting fighter. Is he's done as well as he's done without really having a complete MMA game, at least the way that we normally think of a complete MMA game. Because really, stay on the outside, throw kicks, Imanari roll in, and look for a leg lock. That is Ryan Hall's entire game. And I don't mean to, I'm not trying to disparage the guy. I'm not trying to oversimplify this, but I mean, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. But I really think that's all Ryan Hall's looking to do. And when I say he doesn't have a complete MMA game, what I mean is he doesn't need one. He really hasn't had to develop skills beyond just those two ranges because he's been able to make it work for him. He throws those kicks. We've seen him hurt fighters with those kicks. We've seen him land and hurt. He hurt Darren Elkins a number of times with those hook kicks. He was able to hurt Gray Maynard a number of times with those spinning kicks and those hook kicks. And of course, we've seen him Imanari roll in and grab those leg locks like he did against BJ Penn. However, everyone that Ryan Hall fights knows that that's what he's going to try to do, and that's something that works against him. Is when we see him, he's gonna roll in as soon as you're close enough. He's gonna roll in and try to grab your leg. So what are you gonna do? Most fighters, what they do, if he gets a hold of their leg, they just pull their leg out and they back up and make him get up, go back to striking. But that doesn't necessarily work out very well either, because Hall will just keep using that kicking range, that long range kicking game, and he'll keep picking you apart that way. So we've seen fights, go all 15 minutes playing out that way, where he rolls in, his opponent pulls the leg out, they go back to striking range, Ryan goes back to landing those kicks again. I mean, he can rinse and repeat that for 15 minutes, no problem. However, Minner is not the kind of fighter who's going to stay at range and let that game play out. Minner he's too aggressive for that. He's not going to hang out and try to strike with Ryan Hall for very long. He's not going to hang out at range and let Ryan Hall use that kicking game. He's going to be coming after Ryan Hall. However, is that a great game plan? Minner probably believes he's a good enough grappler to go to the ground. And again, it largely comes down to that 50-50 position, I think. Is Minner a good enough grappler that he can go to the ground with Hall without Hall being able to get to that position? Because, can Minner be effective and be competitive against Hall in the grappling range if they are in other positions? I mean, if Darrick Minner is able to get Ryan Hall on his back, or even if Darrick Minner ends up on his back, if Darrick Minner is able to be in Ryan Hall's guard, or able to find side control, or any of that sort of thing, what's Ryan Hall going to look like there? However, you have to think he's going to be pretty good at moving from any of those positions into 50-50 as well. I'm kind of just going around and around here, but it's such a fascinating matchup to me that it's really hard to kind of guess how it's going to play out. But we have to think that that Minner is going to be looking to grapple, which is the most dangerous place to be for Hall, but it's also the most dangerous place for Hall to be with Minner, because it's Minner's best shot of winning too, is to go to the ground. We're going to test my editing skills here a little bit, because after I finished that video, after I finished recording, I remembered something else that I wanted to say, so I'm going to try to splice this into the video. But what I wanted to mention is, so how do you beat Ryan Hall? I think I mentioned earlier that Ilia Topuria sort of showed us a blueprint on how to do that. Is going to the ground with him and trying to out-grapple him the way to beat him, like we're probably going to see Darrick Minner do. I don't think it is. So what did Ilia Topuria do? We mentioned you can't hang out on the feet with him at range, because he'll play that game all day long, and as soon as you're close enough to box, he's going to roll in for that Imanari roll. What did Ilia Topuria do? He timed him on that Imanari roll, caught him with a punch and stunned him, and then was able to land ground and pound while Hall was on his back and finish him that way. I think that's a perfect blueprint for beating Hall. Again, easier said than done. But another X factor to talk about is that Minner is working with James Krause. That's kind of a secret weapon, right? I mean, if anybody's going to come in with the right game plan here, Krause is going to have that game plan. I would have to think that trying to catch Hall with a big punch coming in and hurt him and then finish, I have to think that that's going to be one of the things that James Krause is going to be working with Minner on. I don't know that. I don't have any inside info here, but I have to think that they're going to be, especially after seeing that Topuria fight and how that played out, they're going to have to be looking at how can we catch him rolling in and how can we get a finish there. Next up, let's talk about X factors and other considerations that maybe haven't come up yet. First one I want to talk about is cardio. We haven't seen any cardio issues from Ryan Hall. He's been able to, but that's partially, I think, because of the way his fights play out. Obviously the wrestling and the grappling range is where, when you're actively wrestling with an opponent who is actively wrestling with you, you're using all of your muscles all the time. Your whole body is working. Wrestling and grappling is really where you wear yourself out. Whereas a lot of Ryan Hall's fights play out in that striking range where he's moving around a lot, he's dancing, he's throwing kicks, but that doesn't wear you out nearly as quickly as wrestling with an opponent does. And when we see Ryan Hall go to grappling, it's usually just rolling in for that Imanari roll, and so he's really not using a lot of energy. Minner is all action, and we definitely do see him wear himself out. So, if this fight, like I said, we have seen Minner win decisions, so it's not like he's completely dead in the water if it goes to round 3. But if we do see a lot of grappling happen here, if these two are able to tie up and grapple and the fight goes long, we could see Minner tire out. However, if they do actively grapple, I can't see the fight going long. I just can't. It's hard for me to think that they're going to cancel each other out. Darrick Minner's going to find a neck, or Ryan Hall's going to find an ankle or something. And I could be wrong, but it's hard for me to see these two tangling up and just just stalemating in grappling positions for long periods of time. I feel like somebody's going to find something. Another X factor to talk about here is the fact that Ryan Hall was brutally KO'd in his last fight, which is not something that's happened to him before that I know of. I mean, how is that going to affect his demeanor? Obviously, Ryan Hall is a very, very intelligent guy, not just in fighting, but in general. He's a really smart guy. He has a strong mind. He has a strong mindset. I would have to lean toward thinking that he's the kind of guy who's going to bounce back pretty well from that KO situation. He's going to come in with the right game plan. He's going to come in confident and that sort of thing. I would think, that's my best guess. Another consideration to talk about here is Darrick Minner's sub-defense in general. Darrick Minner has 12 losses, as we looked at on the tail of the tape. I believe 8 of those losses are by submission, and either all of the rest of them or close to all of the rest of them are ground and pound. So when Darrick Minner loses, he loses on the ground. He loses in grappling scenarios. And so, he's a bit like a Michael Chiesa or something like that. We definitely sometimes see those fighters who are very potent on the ground themselves, able to find submissions, but able to be submitted themselves. And Darrick Minner is definitely one of those fighters. So, his best win condition here is to go to the ground with Hall, but it's his best loss condition too. So it's kind of a tough call there. Let's talk about our best bets for this fight. Ryan Hall is currently a favorite at -210. Darrick Minner, comeback on him as an underdog, is about +180. I personally lean toward Hall to win this fight, as the odds do, but I don't think there's any value on him at -210. It's hard for me to see Minner winning this fight. For all the reasons that I've already mentioned. I think Minner's going to come in hot. They're going to end up going to the ground. I know Minner's a good grappler, but I have to think that if they do go to the ground, Ryan Hall is going to be the better fighter there. I think Ryan Hall is probably going to find a submission in this fight. Is Darrick Minner worth an underdog shot at +180? I don't really think so, but I also don't think you can bet Hall at -210. However, I do have a bet on this fight. I can't remember the number I got. It was pretty close to even money, I think. I think it was pretty close to a coin flip. But I have a bet. I put 1 unit on this fight to end under 2.5 rounds. Like I said, if it plays out on the feet, we definitely do see Ryan Hall go to decisions, but I can't see Minner allowing this fight to play out on the feet. I think he's going to go barreling in. I think they're going to grapple, and I think this fight is going to end in under 2.5 rounds. So if you're looking to bet this fight, that might be what you're going to want to look at. Obviously, at -210, you don't want to bet Hall straight up. Some people might look at that as parlay material. You could. I'm personally not going to parlay it, just because it's hard to trust Ryan Hall just because he has such a weird game. But yeah, this is a fight where I would rather just stay away from picking a side and go with that under 2.5. If you've got other bets you like in this fight, or if there's anything you think I missed in my breakdown, anything you think I'm wrong about, let me know in those comments down there, folks. Thanks so much for stopping by. Have a great night.